because Donald is in the news. A world exclusive was broken a couple of hours ago by the Drudge Report, a big American news website. And their dramatic revelation was that Donald Trump is to run again for a second term as president in 2020. And it's now being picked up by global media. This world exclusive. And yet I wasn't very surprised, because last Friday I was at the CPAC conference. The Conservative Political Action Conference took place just outside Washington, D.C., and I heard Trump speak that morning. This is what he said.
When you look at what's happening to our country, it's incredible. And the fundamentals are so strong. The stock market, I just see with all of the ups and downs since Election Day, is up 37% from election. 37%. Now, it did a little bit of a correction. In fact, I started to say, you know, I was in it for like 13, 14 months from election. I say, is this sucker ever going down a little bit? This is a little embarrassing. It was up 100, up 200, up 1,000, up 150, up 90, up 63. I said, good, that's better. You know, hey, we've got 7 years to go, folks. You know,
7 years to go.
We got a long time to go.
So they all went bonkers in the hall. Thousands of them. Must be at least 10,000 there on that morning. And I was there. I heard it too. And in fact, later on that afternoon, I was speaking.
If you want to see the president keep those majorities in the houses, if you want to see the president go on in the last half of this first term, and I emphasise, this is just his first term, isn't it?
Well, it all seemed pretty obvious. And in fact, the night before, I'd had dinner with a very close friend of his. And I'd said, so is he thinking about doing this again? Oh, yes, he said. No question. He wants to go for a landslide next time round. So I was in little doubt that he was going to run again. He said he was running again. I certainly backed it up. And I got back from Heathrow, came into this studio, and I said on my Sunday show here on LBC, Trump is running again. There's no question about it. And yet no one seemed to notice even what Trump himself had said until this world exclusive broke today. So he's running again. He's already announced his campaign manager, a man called Brad Pascal, a Texan, huge fella. 6'8". I've met him a few times, socialised with him a bit. Very impressive guy. He's a big digital numbers guy. And actually, he ran the digital campaign for Trump during the 2016 campaign. It's just that no one's ever heard of him. He doesn't really do media, doesn't do self-promotion. And I think that's, in a way, something Trump finds quite attractive. He doesn't really want or need other people getting in the way, other people becoming, as Alistair Campbell said when he was supporting Tony Blair, when Alistair Campbell became the story, there was a problem. I used to joke in UKIP, there's only room in this organisation for one big ego. I think that's what Trump wants. He wants loyal people who do the job and keep below the radar. So it's happening, and I have to say, I wonder whether you agree with me. I mean, how do you feel about this wonderful news? I think it's great news. And, I mean, of course, if you want to tell me it's a disaster, then you can call 0345 6060 973, or perhaps like me, you think this man is on course. He's keeping his promises. He's on the way to being a great American president, in which case you can text to 84850, or perhaps you'd rather see somebody else in the White House, maybe Hillary Clinton. I don't know. But if you do, you can tweet Farage and LBC at LBC saying it should be Hillary or anybody else. And you can, of course, watch us on Facebook, because we're live from London next. The Donald is running again. Is he doing a good job? Well, it's certainly been a controversial year, hasn't it? Quite a few ups and downs. Just think about it. You know, the National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn, well, he was the first to fall. as it turned out, he'd lied to the FBI over his links with Russia. Not his links during the campaign, his links before. Then, of course, we had the White House press secretary, Sean Spicer, who provided endless amusement, and he was out the door to be replaced. We then briefly had, I think for 10 days, Anthony Scaramucci was there as the White House communications director. After 10 days, he was gone. Steve Bannon, someone that I've known very well for years, the chief strategist. There was a big falling out. There were things he said to newspapers, alleged to have said to newspapers, and indeed the Michael Wolff book, Fire and Fury, and Steve was gone. And then the FBI director, James Comey, who it was proved conclusively had been leaking, and he was fired. However, I personally think that was perhaps the biggest mistake Trump's made as president, even if you've got somebody from the so-called deep state who is leaking against you. Sometimes better to have them inside the tent rather than outside the tent, because now they've got the Mueller investigation, which drags on, and constant stories about Russian collusion, all of which I'm convinced are baloney. But look, despite the ups and downs, despite some of the tweets, despite some of the media firestorms, despite one press conference where he attacked the CNN guy, I mean, it's almost like a barroom brawl. But you know something? He's delivering on the things that he was elected to do. He is making America richer again. Of that, there is no doubt. And I think the fact that he's standing again is wonderful news. Let's see whether LBC listeners agree with me. Let's go to Frank in Harlow. Frank, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I'm very well. Now, I think it's great news that Trump's running again. What do you think?
Do you really think that Trump is going to get to 2020, Nigel?
I think he'll get to 2020. I think he'll get stronger and stronger, Frank, and I think he could win. I mean, obviously it's a long way off, and you never know in life, but the feeling I get, Frank, in America right at the moment is it's a country filled with optimism. It's got a leader who has made America's standing in the world go up. So the answer, Frank, is yes.
Right, okay, so you've got all of these indictments, you've got all of these problems going around the world, you've got the Israel problem, you've got the...
What's the Israel problem? What's the Israel problem, Frank?
Well, the Israel problem is what's happening in Syria at the moment. What I'm trying to say is, Nigel... Nigel, calm down.
Frank, I'm incredibly calm.
Right. If you had the power to sort out Saudi Arabia, Iran and Syria, what would you do, Nigel?
Well, Saudi Arabia, Frank, is really interesting because Trump's first overseas visit was to Saudi Arabia. And you may remember that speech when he said to some of the biggest leaders in the Muslim world, drive out of your places of worship those who are doing us all so much harm. And interestingly, and it may be coincidence, but interestingly, since Trump went to Saudi Arabia and since some massive deals, business deals were signed between the two countries, we're now seeing,
what countries, Nigel?
We're now seeing, Frank, within Saudi Arabia, some really fundamental reform.
To destroy what countries? Nigel, what are they doing?
Saudi Arabia are buying a lot of military equipment from America, as indeed, Frank, they bought from us. Let's not forget, big contracts between us and the Saudis over the years too.
So, do you agree with our trade deals?
What with Saudi Arabia?
Yes.
I have to say, I think it would have been better for the British government to have been a bit more open with the Saudi Arabians and to say, they should not have acted as basically a safe haven in many cases to extremist preachers. I think we should have been a bit franker with them, Frank. And in fact, Trump wasn't he? He went there and said, there is a problem. Inside some of your mosques, bad stuff is being said. Please stop it. I wish we'd been as honest as that.
Yes, and what did Mr. Trump do to the Saudi Arabians?
Go on, tell me.
Well, you remember the television pictures?
Yeah.
So what did he do?
I don't know, Frank, you tell me. Go on, mate.
No, I'm not.
He went to Saudi Arabia. It was his first overseas visit. It was a hit. Frank, I think he is succeeding as president domestically and on the world stage. You clearly disagree.
Look, I wish you luck, Nigel. Yeah, but I just hope you just don't bring the Trumpism to this country, all right?
All right, I promise I won't, OK? I'll tell you what, Trumpism probably wouldn't work in this country. Look, I know it's controversial, and I know there are lots of you out there that supported my views on Brexit, but don't support my views, or didn't support my views, on Trump. I went out on a limb to support Trump during that campaign. Many thought it was a high-risk thing to do. Many thought it was a stupid thing to do. I'm sitting here tonight arguing that, 14 months into his presidency, he's succeeding, and I think it's terrific news that he said he's going to run again. But hey, 0345 6060 973, come on and vent your spleen. Tell me I'm an idiot. Tell me I've got it completely and utterly wrong. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It's 7:15.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Grieving mother has told how her 5-year-old girl died after being turned away by her GP as they were late for an emergency appointment. The mum says they were 4 minutes late and the doctor told them to return the next day. Natalie's in Sutton.
I told the staff that my daughter couldn't finish a sentence and I was refused an ambulance. When I insisted on an x-ray, they found that one lung was full of pneumonia and it was in fact creeping over to the other lung too.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
At the third stroke, the time sponsored by Cunard will be any time you like. Time to stop. Time to relax. Time to indulge. Time to love. Showtime! Time for a voyage with Cunard.
We've been thinking about pruning. Not your peonies or your privet, but your cost of living. And how, from broadband to mobile phones, these days we're all looking for ways to trim our spending. And then we thought, couldn't we help you cut back on your biggest outgoing? And we thought, yes, we could. So we'll always try to help you remortgage to a better rate and save on your monthly repayments. Mortgages for how life is now. NatWest. We are what we do.
Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
The transfer window may be closed, but at Football Index you can still buy and sell top players for real cash. Football Index is the player trading exchange where you can profit from your football knowledge from as little as £10. Trade up to £1,000. And if you don't love Football Index, get a refund with our 7-day money-back guarantee. Visit gofootballindex.co.uk and become a football trader today. Powered by Opta. Over 18s and new customers only. Deposit required. Other terms apply. Gamble responsibly.
The family member who was concerned. The neighbour who felt uneasy. The teacher who was worried. The coach who noticed at practice. And you. It's up to all of us to keep children safe. If you think a child may be at risk, report it to your local council who can provide the support a child may need. If you think it, report it. Visit gov.uk/tackle child abuse to find out how. And together, we can tackle child abuse.
Do you have a pension? Maybe you've got more than one. How do you know if they're in the right pension funds, making as much money as possible for your retirement? Answer is, you probably don't. At The Pension Works, our fully qualified independent financial advisors could add instant value to your retirement fund. Simply text the word YES to 83222 for your free Pension Works health check. That's YES to 83222 today. Your pensions working harder with The Pension Works.
£1 could buy you a couple of minutes at the hairdressers or a handful of cinema popcorn. Or £1 could buy you a Thunderball ticket for a chance to win £500,000. Bit of a no-brainer, really. Thunderball, only from the National Lottery. For just £1, you could win £500,000. Why not play this Tuesday? Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Time for a voyage with Cunard. Visit cunard.com.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
They've said he's mad, they've said he's dangerous, they've said he's bad, they said he hadn't got a cat's chance in hell, and that was all 3 years ago, before he'd even decided to run as a nominee to be US President. But we are now nearly 14 months in to the Trump presidency, and yeah, I stuck my neck out supporting him, and I think he's doing very, very well indeed. The biggest chunk of his speech on Friday was about future American immigration policy, about ending what they call chain migration, meaning that endless numbers of family members can come, about ending the lottery, and they have a lottery for people getting into the States every year, and he wants to replace that with an Australian-style point system. He spoke also about secure borders, not open borders, and pledged he will build his great big, beautiful southern wall with Mexico. But he also, and he appears to be very tough on immigration, he's also shifted policy on the so-called dreamers, people who were born in America of illegal immigrants, and there's going to be quite a substantial amnesty for many of those. Harris poll today have announced some figures. 63% of voters support Trump's approach to the dreamers. 84% of voters support ending chain migration. 70% of voters support ending the annual lottery. And 79% of voters think secure borders, not open borders, are the way forward. And maybe on areas like this and the economy, that's why his approval ratings are going up. That's why I think it's great that he said he's going to run again in 2020. I know not all of you agree. I wonder what Edward from Salt Lake City has got to say. Edward, good evening.
Hello again there, Nigel.
Hi, nice to have you back on the show, Edward, and I know there's a growing number. I was over at, as I said, CPAC last week. There's a growing number of Americans tuning in to LBC, which is great.
Well, yeah, especially those of us who also watched Steven Crowder and appreciated your interview with him just a couple of days ago.
Yes, I was on with him as well. Yeah. So, Edward, is it? I mean, the Donald's going again. How do you feel?
Absolutely, I'm a diehard Trump supporter. Let me put it this way: how well do you remember everything from the 1980 presidential campaign? Keep in mind, I was only 12 years old at the time.
Well, I was
Reagan Bush.
I was a bit older than that. Reagan. That was Reagan's first win, wasn't it?
That is correct. That's when he defeated Jimmy Carter. And he stood up at the GOP convention, and he asked a rather interesting question that ended up guaranteeing him not only the nomination, but the win in that November.
Uh-huh.
He asked the question of, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? At that point in time, the answer had to be no.
Yes.
Because as great a man as Jimmy Carter is and was, he was not a good president. So imagine what will happen at the GOP convention and during the 2020 campaign if all Donald Trump does is stand up and ask that question.
Yes, and of course, Reagan asked that question in 1980, and as you say, people said, "Hey, we're worse off." And then Reagan asked the question again in 1984, and they all said better off. And he won 49 states, didn't he, in that second presidential election?
Yes, he did. He completely slaughtered Walter Mondale.
Yeah. I tell you, Edward, you raising Reagan's really interesting. Because in the past, I've said, Trump is great on a stage. He's a huge personality. He's a big presence. But he's always punching. And you never quite see in public what I've seen of him in private, namely that he has a good laugh and a joke with everybody. What I think we saw, Edward, on Friday was a very different Trump. A Trump, Reagan would make people think, would make people annoyed about things, but Reagan was very good at making people smile, laugh, and feel better about the world. And what I saw, Edward, on Friday was Trump for the first time making those crowds really laugh, and I felt Trump himself was enjoying it. So much so, Edward, he even told a joke about the bald patch on his head and the comb over.
I did actually see that on a recording. Let me put it this way. I am a huge Trump supporter, but I don't like the man. Okay?
Right.
And if I met him, I'd shake his hand. I would tell him what a fantastic job he's doing. But I'm sorry, the man is a male donkey, to avoid using the word on your radio show there. But at the same time, that is precisely what the United States needs. That's what the UK needs. That's what Canada needs. That's what Australia needs. We need a bunch of people who are going to stand up and say, you know what, I don't give two flips what you say about me. I'm here to do my job.
So, Edward, whether you like him or not's not relevant. You think he's the right man at the right time, yeah?
The right man at the right time, and I would dearly love to shake his hand.
Terrific. Edward, Salt Lake City, thank you very much indeed. On Facebook, Lester says, brilliant president, doing what he said he would do. How unusual. I know Lester. He said, we're going to move the embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Israel, and they to Jerusalem, and they all threw their hands up in horror and said, isn't this awful? Well, it was in his manifesto, as it had been in Obama's and Clinton's and Bush. They'd all promised to do it. The difference is Trump makes promises, he actually delivers, whether you like what he does or not. It's called democracy, I thought. John says, from New Jersey in America here, love LBC. You see, there are people over there listening more and more, enjoying Frank and other people's views on the president. We're going to get a lot more views, John. Don't you worry. The Don is a breath of fresh air. This planet's needed this for a long, long time. The more the merrier, says Steve from Sutton. Nigel, love Trump or hate him, he has made good changes in America, so I think it would be good for him to stand again in 2020. He needs more time to do what he promised, says Kathy. Well, Kathy, make America great again. That was the big campaign slogan. And Trump is good, again, whether you like him or hate him, he's good at slogans, he's good at marketing, he's good at getting out that big, simple message. And I think in 2020, he's already registered, apparently, the name Keep America Great Again. So you can kind of see the direction this is going to take. Trump in 2020, he will win, and it will be a landslide, says Thomas on Twitter. Trumpety, trumpety, Trump. I'm all trumped out here, Nige. Wish him well in his second term. Trump is what America needed. So there are people actually being a bit more supportive of Trump. I wonder what Jim, a new caller from Richmond in Yorkshire, makes of all of this. Good evening, Jim.
Good evening, Nigel.
So you've been motivated to pick up the phone for the first time. What do you think of Trump?
Well, to be absolutely frank, normally as soon as I see or hear you on the television or the radio, I normally switch it off. But
oh well, Jim. That's what the free market allows people to do, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly right. Yes, and it's a pity a lot more people don't.
So
by switching people off who.
So Jim, not only
appalling views.
So Jim, not only have you not switched off, you've called in. So you must. What's kept you with us tonight?
Well, I was listening to Ian Dale and I heard you promoting the show, and that's why I sort of called in, because I just think something I don't hear said enough.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, whether or not Trump has, it's a good thing to make people think and challenge the the perceived view. I mean, shaking things up in the Middle East might help, but if you renege on treaties that have been signed by your predecessors, how can the world exist, and how can we, if we don't hold the moral high ground, criticise other countries like Syria and Russia for reneging on agreements if they don't do it? But
well, Jim, I mean, in a sense, that's a fundamental part of the Brexit debate too, isn't it? Because no government, because it signs a treaty, should bind successor government, surely.
Well, I thought this topic was about Trump, not about Brexit.
Well, you mentioned treaties.
I narrowly voted for Brexit in spite of you, and I'm a confirmed believer now that we've got to a stage where we should definitely go ahead, and we should be out of the customs union and single market as well. But we shouldn't be talking to Europe the way you do. We should be talking to them in a much more positive way. But anyhow,
Jim, I'm positive.
The debate is about Trump, not about Brexit.
So why is he such a bad guy?
Right. Well, I mean,
apart from breaking treaties,
I couldn't stomach the man. Just from before he ever stood for president. Listening to his shows. But the first time I happened one night to switch the television on early in the primaries, and I could not believe what I saw and what I heard. And I don't know what happened before, but there was some protesters in the audience, and I can't remember, I couldn't tell you word for word for what he said, but what he effectively said is, those guys over there that are protesting, go and kick their heads in, and I'll get my guys to defend you. I'll get my lawyers on to defend you. Now, you can take his misogyny, his racism, his narcissism. We surely, whatever good policies leaders have, we need leaders who we can respect their morality, and it set an example for our kids and for people in society. We don't want people, lowering their standards to the lowest.
Jim, a lot of people, Jim, feel like you do. A lot of people feel like you do. They don't like some of the outlandish things he says and is alleged to have done, and I understand that. However, at a time when you need change, you need somebody who is actually a bit rough around the edges, who's not afraid to make an omelette, I've got to break eggs. Would you concede, Jim, despite all of his human faults that you identify, would you concede with the economy he's doing a good job?
No. I'm not saying he is or he isn't. I'm not saying he is or he isn't. I'm not going into that debate. I wouldn't not. I wouldn't dismiss him on those. No, grounds.
Jim. Well, Jim, you've dismissed him on every other grounds. But hey, it's LBC. You don't like Trump. You can't stand me. But you had your say. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC at 7:30, and time for the news with Thomas Watts.
There have been hundreds of crashes on the roads as icy conditions continue across the UK, with further snowfall expected for the rest of the week. People have begun abandoning cars on the A1 near Newcastle this evening. A man's been arrested on suspicion of murder after 3 people died in a house fire in Northern Ireland. The local MP in County Fermanagh says neighbours used a sledgehammer to try to break in and rescue victims this morning. Toys R Us could go into administration as soon as tomorrow if it fails to pay a £15 million VAT bill. The retailer, which employs 3,500 people in the UK, is understood to have struggled with poor trading over Christmas. LBC weather, heavy snow continuing in eastern and northern England tonight, parts of eastern Scotland and central Scotland affected into tomorrow morning, dry and clearer further west and in Wales, an overnight low of -9.
LBC Travel. The M3 remains closed southbound at the M25 junction. There's been an accident involving a motorbike. Now you can still join the M3 from the M25. A diversion has been set up for you, but it's looking very, very slow there. In Hendon, Finchley Lane has a lane shut on the eastbound stretch because of an accident at the junction for the A1. On the trains, there's a reduced service for Greater Anglia and Stansted Express. There's also a reduced service running on the C2C line from Fenchurch Street. LBC Travel. Your next update's in half an hour. I'm Paula Brett.
This is LBC.
Sage Sessions is coming to Etcetera Venues, St Paul's, London on March 13th. For accountants, bookkeepers and partners, this free one-day event delivers the latest insights, innovation and inspiration to support you and your practice. Join us to learn from industry experts, network with peers and hear the latest updates from HMRC on making tax digital. Search Sage Sessions now to register.
The transfer window may be closed, but at Football Index, you can still buy and sell top players for real cash. Football Index is the player trading exchange where you can profit from your football knowledge from as little as £10. Trade up to £1,000. And if you don't love Football Index, get a refund with our 7-day money-back guarantee. Visit gofootballindex.co.uk and become a football trader today. Powered by Opta. Over 18s and new customers only. Deposit required. Other terms apply. Gamble responsibly.
At PlusNet, we say let's hear it for small businesses, the micros that think mega, run by work all day, worry all night warriors. No home life, no love life, no lunch hours or happy hours, only long hours. Our super fast business broadband is for you. Reliable, affordable, with support anytime you need it. Christmas Day, New Year's Day, May Day, May night, whenever, because you guys, you're the future. You make us proud, and you know what? Here at PlusNet, we'll do you proud.
Universal Credit is opening up work for thousands of people across the country. It provides support for people out of work or who start on a low income, and comes with your own work coach to provide help and advice. Universal Credit can top up your wages, and payments won't stop just because you work more than 16 hours. So it can open up lots more job opportunities and makes temporary or part-time work a great place to start. Universal Credit, opening up work. Find out more at gov.uk/openingupwork.
We could tell you about our new SUV's luxurious space, but that would limit your imagination. We could describe its beautiful styling, or even shout about its off-road capability, but words wouldn't do it justice. To truly understand Levante, you must talk its language. Levante, the Maserati of SUVs, from £56,250. Available now with tailored finance packages.
Do you have a pension? Maybe you've got more than one. How do you know if they're in the right pension funds, making as much money as possible for your retirement? Answer is, you probably don't. At The Pension Works, our fully qualified independent financial advisors could add instant value to your retirement fund. Simply text the word YES to 83222 for your free Pension Works health check. That's YES to 83222 today. Your pensions, working harder with The Pension Works.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Trump is running again. I think it's wonderful news, which is provoking some very strong views from you. Before the break, we heard a whole list of expletives used about the US president. Like him or not, that isn't really the point. I think he's doing rather a good job. Before we get back to that, Boris Johnson, this is a Sky News story just broken. Boris Johnson appears to have told the Prime Minister it is wrong to see the task as maintaining no border on the island of Ireland after Brexit, and that the government's task will be to stop this border becoming significantly harder. So it's been a difficult one, hasn't it? You know, the Good Friday Agreement, no border, although of course we do have different currencies and different tax rates, but very, very difficult, thorny question. Nobody wants a hard border back in Northern Ireland, apart from, it seems, the European Commission. And mark my words, I've been saying privately, really, for some months, that I thought one of the great threats to Brexit would be Sinn Féin. Yes, Sinn Féin have 7 MPs. Ever since 1918, they've been elected to the House of Commons. They've never, ever taken their seats because they don't want to swear an oath of allegiance to the Queen. But it was interesting, when I met the Irish Prime Minister, Taoiseach Varadkar, the other week, Leo said, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if the Sinn Féiners turned up to vote? And now today he's come out and publicly urged them to vote. And of course, if Sinn Féin's aim is to get Northern Ireland out of the United Kingdom, they may think turning up on a big Brexit vote to defeat the government will bring them closer to that goal. So watch this space. And I can't resist talking about Sir Martin Donnelly. Yes, Sir Martin, civil servant, studied PPE at Oxford, well, they all do. Went to the College of Europe in Bruges, same place Nick Clegg went. Then he went to the École Nationale d'Administration in Paris. I mean, this bloke's got the full house. Then, of course, he worked for the European Commission for Leon Britton. He's a Euro fanatic. And then, of course, he did very well in the Foreign Office. And in the end, poor old Liam Fox finished up having to try and work with this bloke. I mean, it would appear that the biggest obstacle to Brexit actually is the civil service. And he said today, leaving the single market was like swapping a meal for a packet of crisps. I wonder, is there anybody that's had a senior job in the civil service that doesn't get a peerage, whatever they've done? Which I think is in marked contrast. I was alerted to the fact that Flight Lieutenant Rodney Scrace had died aged 96 a couple of days ago. A Spitfire pilot, World War II, somebody I happened to meet a few times. Well, have a think about this. If peerages and knighthoods are 2 a penny for civil servants or Liberal Democrats, what about this? Of the just shy of 3,000 people who fought for this country in the Battle of Britain, the people that Churchill called the few, there are only 7 of them left alive today. And not one of them has received any post-war recognition for their role in what almost certainly was the single most important battle in the history of our country, perhaps in the history of the world. Because if they hadn't succeeded in stopping the Luftwaffe, Operation Sea Lion would have gone ahead, and Britain would have been crushed under the Nazi boot. There are 7 of them left, and I would say this to the government. Rather than dishing out your knighthoods and peerages to those in the political elite, given that the 1st of April this year is the 100th anniversary of the foundation of the Royal Air Force, wouldn't that be an appropriate moment to honour these 7 people? You know, in France they have a Légion d'honneur medal, which has been given out to people many, many years after their service. I just think recognising those surviving pilots from the Battle of Britain would actually carry great public support. I really, really do. Back to the Donald. He's running again. I think it's tremendous news, but not all of you agree. I wonder what Nick in Kings Lynn makes of this. Good evening, Nick.
Good evening, Mr. Nigel Farage. I don't think it's as somebody who only listens to you or tunes into you to hear what you're saying to your adoring fans, I really can't understand what you're getting so excited about. Just because he's only done about, 15 months?
Yeah, about 14 and a bit,
4 or 5, 15 months of a 4 years. The average US president over the last 50, 60 years has always done 2 terms, but they've never found it necessary after only 15 months to make a special point of saying, I'm going to stand again in 4 or 5 years.
Well, Nick, just to get the facts right here, when Obama said he would run again, there were 580 days to go, and Trump is doing this with 980 days to go. So you're right on that point. He is declaring this earlier than previous presidents have done.
Yes. Well, why? Is there some doubt about it, and is there some problem? You see, it doesn't matter whether you like Trump or not, or whether you support him. Why is it so necessary for him to make this announcement?
Well, why on earth,
Why are you getting so excited
Well, why on earth did Obama do it 2 years before?
Why? I'm not about Obama. Well,
all right.
I'm not on about Obama. I'm on about Trump.
I think Trump sees that his presidency is in a very good place. They've got the midterm elections coming up in November this year, which are, big elections in America, and he's gonna struggle, many think, to hold on to majorities in both of those houses. So I guess this is all part of the big midterm election campaign. Why am I excited about it, Nick? Well, because I think it's a good thing. I think he's making the right changes. I hope once we get this Brexit situation sorted out that we can be a lot closer to America, and I see an American president, Nick, who is very pro this country.
Do you?
Yes.
Well, let's just see. Why do you think that minor crash on the stock market occurred the other week?
Oh, Nick, please, don't give me that. Don't give me that. Do you know something?
Well,
the stock market is massively up since Trump was elected.
Yeah, do you know why? Yeah, that means nothing to the real economy. What's happening in the stocks and shares
means a lot of people's pensions, Nick.
No, he's reduced taxes to an all-time low, and that puts the stock market up, and inflation as well. And what's he done about the deficit? This massive $1 trillion deficit.
Nick, your point about the deficit is an absolutely fair one. And there are Conservatives over there in Congress and Senate, Republicans, who are concerned about what he's done to the deficit, and you're absolutely right. I agree with you. That's the concern. The belief, Nick, is that by doing what they've done, hundreds of billions of dollars are going to be repatriated to America because corporation taxes were too high, and that through the economic boom, they will pay down that deficit.
How many American governments have said that over the past 40, 50 years?
Yeah, well, there were governments, don't forget...
Nigel...
Don't forget, Nick, that Mrs. Thatcher in the 80s, ran big deficits, but by the late 1980s was actually paying back the national debt out of her budget every year. So it can be done if you create enough economic prosperity.
Well, I'll tell you what, Nigel, you go and make more political speeches in America. Only the other week you were going on about interfering in other people's elections. And here you are making speeches again. So I don't think there's personally anything wrong in that. But it's a bit of a contradiction, isn't it? When you're going around talking about other people interfering...
Nick, there is a movement. There is a movement. There is a movement of those of us right across the West who believe in the nation-state as the fundamental building block. We are opposed to European Union. We are opposed to, as we see it, the erosion of our national democracy, and we all link arms and fight together against the global elite. And actually, I find it a very liberating and invigorating thing to do. Nick, I thank you for your call. Helen is a new caller from Acle in Norfolk. Good evening, Helen.
Hello there. Hello, Nigel. I really want to touch on what your previous caller mentioned, also from Norfolk. We must have a thing about spending money. Because I don't think he'll run for a second term, because I think America will be bankrupt.
Well, growth in America at the moment, Helen, is 3.1%. Tax receipts are up. There is... I mean, the manager of my hotel in Washington told me they can't find enough staff, so you've got underemployment, virtually all-time modern lows.
You're probably sending all the staff back to Mexico.
Well, now, come on. They have been deporting illegal immigrants. That is true, but not legal ones, please. Helen, look, the biggest risk economically he's taking is he is running up the deficit, and you're absolutely right to identify that. But is it possible, Helen, that with all this money coming back, and all the optimism that I sense in America, maybe this time next year, growth will be 4%, not 3%, and therefore you suddenly start to get the revenues?
I think the growth is a misleading figure, because the growth is based on basically the Chinese buying debt. Every time the American government issues debt and bonds,
yep.
the Chinese buy it up.
Yep.
Now, Mr. Trump is now going to upset the Chinese by introducing tariff on trade, and are the Chinese just going to stand back and take this?
Well, Helen, they can always sell their bonds. I think that there would be buyers in the market for those bonds, don't you think?
But not as much as the Chinese, who are the major purchasers of that debt.
Helen, you're right. The Chinese own a gargantuan amount of American debt. And Helen, you may be right. The deficit may be his undoing. It is the big economic gamble that Donald Trump has taken. But I think it's the right one at the right time. And I think it's going to work. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC. It's now 7:46.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
Diabetes cases have doubled in 20 years to a record 3.7 million. Surely this epidemic now requires urgent action.
Clive Bull on LBC.
£1 could buy you a mouthful of lager, or about 14.5 chips. Or £1 could buy you a Thunderball ticket for a chance to win £500,000. Bit of a no-brainer, really. Thunderball, only from the National Lottery. For just £1, you could win £500,000. Why not play this Tuesday? Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
At Motorpoint, we know life is full of different journeys. Short ones, long ones, and everything in between ones. So wherever life takes you, we'll help you get there. Our 7,000 low-mileage used cars are all under 3 years old. And with an average saving of £8,500 off the new list price, there's no need to haggle. And you can drive away the same day, even if you're part exchanging. There's a Motorpoint car for every journey. Visit Motorpoint Chingford or motorpoint.co.uk today.
Do you have a pension? Maybe you've got more than one. How do you know if they're in the right pension funds, making as much money as possible for your retirement? Answer is, you probably don't. At The Pension Works, our fully qualified independent financial advisors could add instant value to your retirement fund. Simply text the word YES to 83222 for your free Pension Works health check. That's YES to 83222 today. Your pensions, working harder with The Pension Works.
On day 4 of our cruise, we struck gold, exploring Lisbon on a bright yellow tram, munching happily on a pastel de nata. That's a custard tart to you and me. Oporto followed, a beguiling city with a historic heart you can lose yourself in. And we did. Now, after a lip-smacking meal on board, will it be a show, live music, or a film? Either way, it'll be an epic.
7 nights from $799 per person. Book by the 5th of March for £150 per cabin to spend on board. P&O Cruises.
This is the life.
Based on N808 NF grade, subject to availability. Conditions apply.
The transfer window may be closed, but at Football Index, you can still buy and sell top players for real cash. Football Index is the player trading exchange where you can profit from your football knowledge from as little as £10. Trade up to £1,000. And if you don't love Football Index, get a refund with our 7-day money-back guarantee. Visit gofootballindex.co.uk and become a football trader today. Powered by Opta. Over 18s and new customers only. Deposit required. Other terms apply. Gamble responsibly.
No matter what you want to achieve in the world of business, LBC is the place for you every Monday from 9 p.m. for the business hour.
But I am a massive believer that you can continue to hold on to an idea for years, but unless you actually get out there and start talking to people about it and do something with it, an idea is worth nothing. If somebody else executes, they bring it to market quicker than you do.
Join Clive Bull for the business hour every Monday evening from 9 with BT, helping you to work where, when and how you want.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Trump's running again, and I think it's great. Not everybody does, though. Gina on Facebook says, I think DT is doing better in 1 year than Obama has done in 8 years. And yes, Gina, the point he made at Davos was that unemployment amongst black and Hispanic Americans had fallen very sharply. He said he was proud of that. Gerald says, yeehaw! I'm from the great state of Texas, and I believe Trump is the greatest president ever. Well, there's some big Trump supporters, but there's some detractors too. I'm going to go to Tanvir, who's calling from East Finchley. Good evening, Tanvir. What do you make of the Donald?
Well, I think he is a very big racist. I think he is dividing America. I think he's making less friendly the people of America. I think his foreign policy is no good. There's a lot of things I can go on. He's a misogynist.
Okay, Tanvir, can we just? I mean, you've obviously got a big list, and I do know some people absolutely can't stand him. Why do you say that he's a racist?
Well, the speech that he gave a few days ago, it had some immigration points in it.
And very good ones, I thought.
Well, do you remember that he read a poem called The Snake?
I do.
Yeah. Do you think a world leader should read a poem that is openly racist and which paints the immigrants that want to come to America as snakes? As a general thing.
Well, I have to say
thought that was extremely bad.
I have to say, Tanvir, I was there, and I thought the way he argued for getting rid of the lottery, for having a skills-based system, for making people could and would integrate into American society and adopt their values, I thought all of that was tremendous. I personally didn't think he should have read out that snake poem, but hey, he chose to do it. But I would ask you, Tanvir, would you rather live under a leader who was cautious about those that were let in case they did great damage and danger, or would you rather live under Mrs. Merkel, who just said to 1 million people, come on down, without being able to security check a single one of them?
Well, I don't think Mrs. Merkel is relevant to this point we are talking about.
Well, I do, Ted. I do. I do.
Let's try.
And what he's saying is...
Let me ask you, Nigel, one thing. Right. America has around 1 million or so, and I don't have the statistics, of immigrants coming into the country every year.
Yep.
And they go through various checks, etc. Out of those 1 million people, how many do you think actually are the troublemakers?
Well, very
100?
Very few.
50?
Very few. No, and one of the reasons, Tanvir...
Very few.
Yeah, and one of the reasons is that Obama, Tanvir, put in very, very strict vetting for people, particularly those coming from countries that were having problems. So this idea that you vet heavily, it's not Trump's brand new idea. Obama was doing it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So they're already being vet. What he is now doing is he is vilifying those people. He is making everyone assume that you are guilty before you are even tried because you come from the so-called shithole countries, so your values are very much less than ours. Now that is very racist.
Well, we're going to watch our language. Tanvir, you may not like it, but he is basically carrying on a policy that was put in place by Obama, so maybe, if that's how you feel, you should use that word about him too. British politicians are weak. You can't say that about President Trump, can you? Says Mick on Twitter. We love President Trump. He does what he says he will do, and so many people are not used to that, especially in this country. We wish he was here in number 10, Jennifer. Jennifer, we had a general election last June, and we saw Mr. Corbyn yesterday, going about 180 degrees different direction on many of those pledges. And we've had Theresa May as Home Secretary and Prime Minister promising to reduce immigration to the tens of thousands, and there's absolutely no sign of it. And as I say, whatever it is that Trump does, he kind of said he'd do it in the campaign. I don't believe for democracy that can be a bad thing in any way at all. On Twitter, Terry says, hope he gets in and continues to give the establishment another 2 years education. It's looking like we need someone here also with the draw-dropping goings-on, according to the press. Well, be careful what the press say sometimes. Sam is calling from Beaconsfield. Good evening, Sam.
Hey, good evening, Nigel. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. No, I am an unashamed Trump supporter, Sam, but I know that not everybody is.
No. Actually, to be honest with you, I was thinking before I started talking that I don't think it's right for people to come on the call and just call the President of the United States racist.
No, nor do I. It's crazy.
And the reason I say that is because he's gone through enough vetting process by the Republicans. He was a businessman, an established businessman in the society for a very long time. He would not survive or even made it that far if he was a racist. I don't think he's an idiot either. He's a very smart guy. We shouldn't be judging his strength of mind.
Okay.
What I think, though, is this. Look, the fact is that Mr. Trump is a representative of an America First movement, the movement that you were just alluding to, right?
Yes.
And these movements are a consequence of where globalization hasn't worked, and whether Mr. Trump is around or not, these movements will stay. My problem, and although I have a concern with this, I'm not an exit here for, but my concern is this. I think Mr. Trump is the wrong person to represent movements like this because he's very reckless. And if I may, can I assess this through some of his foreign policy?
Sam, time is very short. But please give us one clear example of where you think his foreign policy is wrong.
I'm actually an Iranian, and my huge problem is with his stance against the Iranian nuclear deal. For him to turn around and frankly hide behind the character of America First and putting a deal that could destabilize the region, could be good for the world, and all of a sudden turning his back on it is reckless.
Well, Sam, I mean, this policy brings strong passions on both sides, but there is a strong argument that says that Iran has been funding terror, and it's pretty clear that this administration has come down on the Sunni side as opposed to the Shia side. That's the strategic decision that they've made.
But this administration and the administration previous to it, well, not this administration, but definitely the administration previous to it, engaged in dialogue with Iran and concluded in something that was moving towards peace. He's now taking a risk against that. Why is that in the national interest of the United States?
Because they firmly believe in DC that Iran has been a state that has sponsored terrorism. That's the reason, Sam. Right or wrong, Sam, I thank you for your call and for your concern. You may think everyone hates Donald Trump, but outside of Europe, the impression is very different. Trump is not a likeable chap, but probably done more for his own country than anyone since President JFK. I've got time for a quick last call. It's Steve who's calling from Croydon. Good evening, Steve.
Oh, hi, Nigel. Yeah, I know he's likeable. He's got a likeable side, but he's a liar and a hypocrite, and I'll tell you why. Mm-hmm. On his pre-election campaign, he swore he'd bring American troops home from fighting the costly wars abroad and bring them home and spend the money on American infrastructure instead. The second part of that is the hypocrite part of it is he had to go at American football players for taking the knee, NFL football players for taking the knee, yet he's best buddies with Henry Kissinger, who said, and I quote, military men are dumb, stupid animals to be used as
well, I don't think you can. Yeah, I don't think you can, Steve. You can't blame Trump for anything Kissinger may or may not have said over a very, very long life. But Steve, I thank you. There are some that say too much military interference. He would argue ISIS are being militarily smashed. Colin says, I think Nigel is getting paid by Trump's team, and he wants to make sure it lasts a long time. Colin, I'm not being paid by the Russians. I'm not being paid by Trump. Please, please stop making these wild allegations and accusations. Well, it's been a good debate. A lot of you absolutely hate Trump. I don't. Using words like wonderful, I was really deliberately trying to tease you a bit tonight. But Kevin does agree. He on Facebook says, the best thing that's ever happened to a state since Lincoln. So there you go. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show. I'm back tomorrow night at 7. At 10 tonight, it's Ian Collins. But up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you very much. Coming up at 9, it's a chance to get some medical advice. Dr. Sneh Kempko will be here for the Health Hour. We'll be talking about Scotland's